All right, let's jump right in. When you're staring down a government contract, what you see on the page is rarely the full story. Hidden between the lines are these little landmines, liabilities and ambiguities that can absolutely tank your profit and put your whole company at risk. Today, we're going to tear down a real-world solicitation. We're going to learn how to think like a chief risk architect to protect the deal. And listen, that is not an exaggeration. A single, poorly understood clause can set off a chain reaction of financial losses and compliance failures you can't come back from. The goal isn't just to win the work, right? It's to win work that's actually profitable and, possible to complete without crippling your business. So here's our case study for today. It's a UNICOR contract for a roof and HVAC replacement at a federal medical center. On the surface, it looks pretty vanilla, right? A firm fixed price construction job. But the moment you start to look a little closer, the cracks, well, they start to show. So let's peel back the layers. Now, the first and maybe the most dangerous trap we're going to talk about is something we call an uncurable defect. This is not a simple typo you can just ask about in an email. No, this is a fundamental flaw that's baked right into the very structure of the deal. And if you don't catch it before you bid, it is way too late. I mean, just think about that for a second. What happens when the government tells you they're going to judge your proposal by one set of rules, but the contract itself is built on a completely different foundation? It creates this massive ambiguity, and in government contracting, ambiguity always means risk for you, the contractor. And this just lays it all out, plain as day. The government says they're using evaluation criteria from FAR Part 12, which is designed for simple commercial stuff. Think laptops, office chairs. But the contract itself is a complex construction project, which is supposed to be governed by FAR Part 36. They're basically trying to use the rules for buying a pencil to build a hospital roof. It's a massive, glaring contradiction. So to put a fine point on it, this is an uncurable defect. It's a structural flaw that makes it pretty much impossible to know how your proposal is actually going to be judged. You're essentially bidding blind. And that's not just a financial gamble. A mistake here could seriously damage your reputation and your chances of winning future work. So what do we do about it? Well, we don't just ignore it and hope for the best. We take decisive action. Step 1 is what we just did. We found the contradiction. Step 2, we submit a formal request for information, an RFI. This is the official way to ask questions and get the agency on the record. And step 3, this move forces the agency to pick a lane. Either it's Part 12 or it's Part 36. That removes the ambiguity and de-risks the entire bid for everyone involved. Okay, so structural flaws aren't the only danger buried in all that fine print. Let's talk about our next threat, which has to do with rules that, well, they might not even be valid anymore. This is all about navigating what we call the sunset protocol, and it's about these agency-specific clauses that could be totally outdated or legally unenforceable. Now, check this out. Our own intelligence brief flagged a specific clause from the Justice Acquisition Regulation, or JAR. The warning couldn't be clearer. This particular rule might not have any solid legal authority behind it, so relying on it or letting the government hold you to it is a really high-risk gamble. The sunset protocol is just the formal name for the review process these agency-specific rules go through. If they aren't actually backed by a real law, they can expire, become invalid. So our strategy here, once again, is to ask the contracting officer directly, hey, is this clause still valid and enforceable? You have to verify. Never, ever assume. All right, our third hidden danger is the most subtle one. We call it a margin mirage. It looks like a simple, profitable piece of the contract, but it's actually hiding some major future costs and liabilities that are just going to chew away at your profit. In our UNICOR contract, the Mirage is this new HVAC control system. The scope of work just says, replace the controls. Sounds easy, right? But it's missing these critical cybersecurity mandates. There's no requirement for a software bill of materials, an SBOM, which is basically an ingredients list for the software code. And it doesn't mention FIPS 143, which is the federal encryption standard. This isn't just an oversight, folks. It's a massive security vulnerability waiting to happen. And this right here is the heart of a margin mirage. The government asks for something simple, but you, as the expert, know that new executive orders and emerging standards are going to require a much more secure and much more expensive solution down the road. The cost of that future compliance, it's going to come straight out of your pocket, turning what looked like a profitable job into a loss. So here's the brilliant part. Here's how we turn this risk into a huge advantage. We don't just quote them what they asked for. We quote a solution that meets the unstated but inevitable security requirements. We proactively offer secure controls with a full SBOM and FIPS validated encryption. This shows we get the bigger picture, and it positions us as the expert, low-risk choice. So, we've looked at three really distinct threats: the uncurable defect, the sunset protocol, and the margin mirage. The solution to all of this is to stop thinking like just another bidder and start acting like a chief risk architect, applying a consistent framework to protect your entire pipeline. And here it is. This is that framework in action. It's built on three pillars. Pillar 1 is pre-award protection, where we hunt for and neutralize those uncurable defects before we even think about bidding. Pillar 2 is margin architecture, where we find and expose the margin mirages to protect our profit. And Pillar 3 is all about compliance, where we navigate that sunset protocol so we don't get trapped by bad regulations. So I'll just leave you with this question. Take a hard look at the opportunities you're chasing right now. Are you simply responding to what's written on the page, or are you actively hunting for the traps hidden between the lines? Because being a chief risk architect isn't just about winning the next deal, it's about building a business that can actually deliver on its promises and stay profitable for the long haul.